Howdy and welcome back to the Ineligibles podcast. My name is Will Stone. His name is Chase Caldwell. Just the two of us rocking it today. Um, First and foremost, how about our very own Texas Rangers? Chase sporting the Rangers fishing shirt.
Which side is it on? There it
It's
is.
on that. There you go. There you go.
Yep.
Been to like 6 games this year. It's more than I've been to in the last you know 7 years. It feels like.
I have I enjoy going to baseball games. I do not follow baseball, admittedly, because 162 games. I love soccer.
Yeah.
Soccer is one of my favorite sports. As soccer probably is my favorite sport because that's what I played growing up, and there, there's no way you can follow all those games. And soccer's even worse because they all play on different teams and sub in different players and all that kind of stuff. But baseball, way too many games.
Yeah.
I'm good to follow college football, and that's 12 games a year. So don't really follow it closely, I wouldn't say, but somehow, yeah, this has just been a year where the church has gone to a couple games. I went with them, and I went to a game with you and Brittany, and
Yeah.
um, me and Betty went to a game, and or me and Emily and Betty and Andy, I guess I should say. Um, we there's yeah, there's been several times that I've gone to games, and they've always been fun.
Yeah.
It's been a fun year to follow the Rangers. Um, and I guess I went to a couple games last year too, but this year, yeah, I think 6 or maybe 7. I think I might have been to 7 games this year.
Yeah.
So looky there.
I went to one. It may have been the last game, like one of the last games of the season last year, and then went to that one this year with you guys.
Hmm.
Um, I'll say this: like I'm a Rangers fan. Like grew up going to games and uh, followed closely throughout. You know the the late 2000s, like those runs and things like that. 2011, just in general as a sports fan, especially the fall of 2011. Probably hurt more than any any part of sports fandom ever. So like
Hmm.
I'm all Dallas teams. The Mavericks won the championship in June of 11. The first championship I'd witnessed by one of my own teams. That was exciting. And then I get to A&M and I'm pumped up. We're ranked in the top 10, and we blow 5 second half leads. We go 6-6, lose to Texas in the last time that game was played.
Hmm.
Fire our coach. The Cowboys do the same thing, basically go 8-8. Uh,
Or this is from the
there you
last
go.
time we played.
That's awesome. And then the Rangers had Game 6, and that was just soul crushing. So,
Sounds like it.
um,
Yeah.
and it's been a lot of the same ever since. uh, we obviously there's been some high moments, in each of my teams, and this is an A&M podcast, college football podcast. So we've had some moments,
Yeah.
um, but like we talked about, we've talked about this for the past couple weeks, but it's that same feeling that we get this time every year. Like when it was
Yeah.
Sumlin,
Yeah.
we'd start out 5-0. The one year 6-0, and then it would just all come crashing down. And between last year's disaster, this year hasn't been that, at least not yet. But it all feels the same. Like it's starting to get a little bit numb.
It is. I was, in fact, whenever you brought up the Rangers, I was going to say, well, I can tell you this: they're not winning because of me going to these games because I haven't missed an Aggie game this year. Um, it, it's it is. It's exhausting as a fan, and I think some of it is maybe more modern day college football because you look into some of the or if you listen to people talk about like, oh, well, we had this great team back in the 90s or the 80s or whatever, like the teams that they really revel about. You go back and look, and it'll be like number 6 Texas that's 9-3, and you're like, how are they number 6 at 9-3?
Yeah.
But you look at those records from years ago, and it wasn't, you know, it wasn't what we have now, where you lose 2 games, and I mean, you're pretty much out of it. Maybe that's going to change a little bit next year. Maybe I mean, we've definitely seen a lot of parity this year in college football, and last year included. So maybe that 12-team format will bring that back a bit. But outside of that, yeah, it's a lot of the same, and it's aggravating, because you talk a big game, um, and really, like, I think this has been building at A&M for years, where almost every year with our great recruiting classes that we had under Sumlin, our great recruiting classes that we had, under Jimbo so far, um, every year we can say, well, based on the talent we have, we shouldn't lose this many games. And well, I mean, we do. And then we recruit better talent, and it's the same thing. And so, like, it's I don't know. I don't want to be too terribly doom and gloom, because I'm not necessarily doom and gloom. It's just sucks a lot of the fun out of the whole thing. Whenever I would trade an undefeated season for a 1-11 season in a heartbeat.
Oh,
Like
easily.
like if I let's say that you say, okay, hey, we'll let you go undefeated 1 year, but then you're going to go 3 years in a row where you don't make a bowl game. I'd be like, perfect, sounds
Bring it
great.
on.
Let's do it. That'd be so much fun. And I would still be rooting during the times that we were losing, but it's the build up, and then the letdown that is pretty annoying, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I'll tell you this: we did Tennessee right this time around. When
We
it
did.
comes to future away games, that's the way I'm doing it from now on. Because honestly, like, when I think about the Tennessee game, I don't even think about the game. I think about all the other stuff that we did. For those listening, Will and I and a group of friends, we kind of made it into a longer trip. We made it into a road trip, flew into Nashville, drove through Tennessee, blah blah blah, went to Knoxville for the game. But it was like even had we won that game, it would have been probably the low light of the trip. It wouldn't have been really the highlight. So when it comes to future road games, I'm definitely doing that. I'm not gonna pull a Miami where I just fly in for the game, lose, and then fly home. Like that, I'm not gonna do that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it was a great trip, and it reminded me, like there was a moment, and I wish I could just freeze that moment for like 12 hours and just live in it. When we were at the like at the tailgate scene,
Hmm.
and just like drinks were flowing, and people like the folks that we were tailgating with were just super nice, and like our group was rolling, like there's probably what, like, when you count Mason and Trey, and then what, like 12 of us or
12 or
so, like
13, something
13.
like
Yeah,
that.
like
Yeah,
it's like we're rolling pretty deep, and like it feels like we're back in college.
yeah.
It
No, it
feels
was
like,
fun.
and like that part was incredible. um just getting to experience another SEC program, and their culture, how they do things, and the way that which they do them, as
Yeah,
Jimbo might
the way in
say.
which we do things. Execute, 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 execute,
Yeah.
execute, execute. Did you see that video this week, by the way?
Oh my god, I didn't click on it, but I've scrolled past it.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah,
I
but
watched enough of it to just hear him say "execute" like 3 times,
yeah,
and props to whoever put that out there because
who
that
has
was
time
hilarious.
to do that?
I don't know. Maybe they wrote
But,
an AI program, who
yeah,
knows?
yeah, it's got to be some kind of AI. But no, it was super cool. The campus is dope. The tailgating, the sailgating. I've been to a number of tailgates, and I've never seen so much like live music. Like every other tailgate had like a person playing
Like
guitar
a
with a speaker.
band.
Yeah,
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 you made that comment while we were there, and, I've never even thought about it. I don't know if I've ever seen live music at a tailgate, period, and I mean, it was everywhere there.
yeah.
It was
It's
like the
got
battle of the bands.
yeah. Like Nashville is the live music capital of the world. Maybe that just spills over into Knoxville.
Yeah.
Like all the guys trying to make it, if they can't make it there, they try to get booked at a tailgate or something.
Right. No, I don't know. That was the beautiful campus. The people there were incredibly nice. Of all the fans that we've interacted with, I think they're probably top of my list. They treated us like Aggies would treat them. Um, had so many people come up to me, probably 20 people, ask me like, "Hey, is everybody treating you nice? Is everything great?" All of that. Um, Even had a guy, like, as we were walking away and we were losing, he kinda came up and talked to me for a second about, like, "Man, what are y'all gonna do about Jimbo?" Like, because you could tell he was just a college football fan. He wasn't, like, rubbing it in, right? He was just talking to me, and so, as we were kinda going back and forth, I was like, "Hey, where's the" I was like, "Is this the right direction for me to be going to get back to Circle Park?" And he was like, "Oh, you're headed to Circle Park?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I'll walk you there." And he walked me all the way there. And when we got there, like to where you could see it, he's like, "Okay, so just cross the street. It's right there. You see that statue?" And I said, "Yeah." And he was like, "Just go right there." And then he turned around and went back the way that we had come. And we had gone like across that bridge, whenever we went back over that we walked to.
Yeah.
Um, so like he went like a good ways out of his way to like show me where we were going, and I didn't realize. I just figured maybe he was walking there, and so people were nice. I do not. I'm always going to stand on this soapbox. Don't ever boo players that get hurt.
Oh,
I hate that. Like
the
Tennessee,
worst.
y'all would be. I would probably just switch over to being a Tennessee fan after that weekend if it wasn't for that. As soon as that happened, I'm like, God bless America. It was almost perfect. And Georgia was the same way. Georgia fans were super nice until they started booing whenever our players would go down. And that is the stupidest thing. If you think that teams purposefully do that to slow down offenses, you're an idiot. That doesn't happen. And maybe it's happened once or twice in history, but I promise you it isn't the game plan of the defense. And where that really I'm gonna go on a little soapbox here, Will.
Oh, get
Sorry
after
for
it.
the interruption. But where that comes from is people see the player, right, get up and kind of go to run off the field, and then they'll see people on the sideline pointing down at the ground, and then the player will go down. Okay. That doesn't mean that the player is faking the injury. Understand this. That means that their coach understands that they are hurt, and the player doesn't realize that they're trying to run off the field. So if you're an injured player, you only have the game only pauses for you if you go down. So if you do not go down, especially if you are on defense. Now, if you're on offense and you sub out, then the defense you have the ref will go run and put his hand over the ball, and it forces it, the defense has to have the same amount of time to sub in if the offense subs, right? So if you're on defense, you don't have that luxury. So if you're running a player off the field and another player is running on the field, the offense can snap the ball. You have 12 players on the field. There's a flag. They get a free play. Or maybe you only have 10 players on the field, and now they get another free play because there's going to be somebody wide open. So understand, when you see people pointing at the ground, that doesn't mean that they're faking it. That means that they're on the same wavelength. They understand that guy has hurt his ankle. Maybe he's been battling that injury for 3 or 4 weeks, and they know that he's hurt. So they're telling him, go down, go down, go down. And it's no different than all of these other things that players are taught about, set your feet. If you're receiving the punt, let it go over your head. Those kinds of different things that every team teaches it, because it's just a matter of knowing the rules of football. So now that you've been educated, you can now know that next time that you see somebody doing like this on the sideline, that doesn't mean, hey, fake an injury for us so that we can get a free timeout. That means, hey, you're hurt. Don't be an idiot and go down. You're not going to get time if you don't go down. So, little tidbit for you. Now, I will say this. I'm not saying that people have not faked injuries in the past,
Oh yeah.
because it has happened. But I promise you, we had 3 injuries in the game. I think a total of 3 injuries.
Yeah, and they were all significant. And and
Yes.
and they booed on the very first one.
That's
Like,
what I mean. That's what I mean.
yeah.
If you're going to, if we had 10 injuries and you start booing, maybe I could see that. If every injury was on defense or whatever, maybe I could see that. But when you boo on the very first injury of the game, you're an idiot. No other way to say it. Sorry. You're just an idiot.
Well, and the other team that's exactly like that is Ole Miss. Um, and they're like almost the anti-Tennessee. Like they their fans suck from that aspect, and they're just not nice in general. Like they're all
Yeah.
kind of pricks. Um, at least in my experience.
Yeah, mine too.
Uh, but like they have Lane Kiffin. They run very fast paced on offense, as does Tennessee. And now their fans, they've had those coaches for a couple of years. They're like, oh, our offense is so good. We're so fast. We tire these defenses out. And they have to fake injuries. Like, you're not that good. Like,
Well, Lane Kiffin also milks that. Like
yeah,
he will accuse that, because I mean it's just like Fox News or CNN nowadays. Like, you can accuse it, and is Jimbo going to go put on a press conference and say, "No, we weren't doing that"? No, like nobody's going to come out and lower themselves to that level. So he can say that kind of stuff with impunity, and he knows it'll get his fan base all fired up. And he's just a fan coach in that aspect, where he likes to go viral, and
yeah.
likes to say stuff like that gets people riled up.
Well, and now like all those Ole Miss fans and Tennessee fans apparently, um, they think every injury is just is because their offense is too good, and we have to stoop to faking an injury just to have a chance to slow them down. And like, if we had 15 guys go down, then yeah, some of them probably were a little exaggerated. We had 3 guys, and one of them was on crutches, and the other 2 might not even play this weekend, 2 weeks after the fact. So
Yeah,
it sickens me to witness that type of behavior.
me too. Because you know what, like I'm definitely the biggest college football fan and follower that I know. I love it. You and I both are. That's why we have a podcast. I mean, we love college football, but I've seen the insides of college football, and all of those guys, especially D1 and SEC caliber athletes, like they're on the same wave. They exist in a different universe than you and I do. They didn't go to Texas A&M because they love the history. They didn't go to Texas A&M because they love tradition. They didn't go to Tennessee because they love checkered nailing. They didn't go to any of this. They are on their pathway to the NFL. That's it. They treat themselves as professional athletes as it is. So they don't care about that. And really and truly, like to some degree, like when people are like, oh, how did you go 5-7 and then end up with a really high recruiting class because the recruits don't care as much as you think they do about wins and losses. It's a matter of like when they're in those recruiting meetings, they're not. You think the coach is being like, "Hey, man, if we can get you here, then we're going to win the national championship next year." Can you believe that you can win the national championship here? No, they're like, "Hey, here's our method on how we're going to get you to the NFL." Here's, they go to the parents and say, "Here's how we're going to get your kid, bring them in, get them a degree with a high level. Our goal is to get them to the NFL." And why would we do all of this for them? Well, because we think if we brought them here, we can win a national championship with them, and it's something that I want to see happen. That's more recruiting. And sure, like when we're talking recruiting, we're talking 16-year-olds sometimes, right? Like
Yeah.
they have that immaturity that you do have to kind of be like, hey, we're going to win a national championship. But once you get to that level, once you're in college football, they're worried about getting to the next level.
Yeah.
They're not worried about whether they win or lose this one game. I mean, they
Yeah.
do care about the games. Don't get me wrong. They do care about the games, but not to the point that we're going to go around faking injuries every time we play Tennessee. I mean, that's just stupid.
Yeah.
But
Um,
sorry, I went on a big soapbox there, but
you're good. It's
my
been
biggest pet peeve.
it's been 2 weeks since the game, and like I'll be straightforward. I don't have notes. Like I was inside the stadium, and remember for the most part what happened,
Mhm.
and what really just bothers me the most is that we are just wasting uh these great performances from the defense,
Mhm.
and we're asking them to play or to accomplish an impossible task in
Yep.
in the year 2023 with the way football is played today. You're not going to shut teams out on a routine basis. You're not going to hold teams under 150 yards and just like wrecking crew defense, complete domination. It's literally impossible unless you have the 49ers defense playing Groesbeck High School. It's just
Mhm.
it's not going to happen. And our defense does a tremendous job, and they've, with the exception of Miami, they've played pretty dang well in every game. They
Mhm.
they stifled Bama's running game. You gave up a couple deep shots, but you know that's the first time in probably forever that Bama couldn't run at all on us. Uh, Tennessee, we held them in check most of the game. They had a punt return that was the difference in the game. 7 points,
Mhm.
and those guys are so talented, and they've just played their asses off. A guy like Edrin Cooper, like he's going to be a top 2 or 3 round pick now. Like I would have
Yeah.
said that 2 months ago, but he's played so well, and like I'm like, man, like he's going to be gone, and like McKinley Jackson's going to be gone, and like you know we've got good guys and great players, but this is so hard to do, and we're actually doing that part. We can't do the easy part, which is offense, and
Mhm.
it's incredibly frustrating.
It is. Our offensive line has really worn me out the past couple games, and and I'm admittedly not just a huge, like, way more about the offensive line than I do. I mean, but when I watch our quarterback on his back every play. Now, some of that's on him. Um, it's such a big distinction from where we were early in the year, especially namely with Connor at quarterback. When after the Miami game, I'm saying, yeah, our defense didn't do good, but we have so much talent there that I think that's not going to last. Which that part was right, and I said, well, but what I learned from the Miami game was that we could score on anyone. And I said I felt the way I did in 2012, 2013 with Johnny teams where I'm like, it's okay, our offense got us. And I haven't felt like that in 10 years that like, oh, well, our offense can get us back in this game. I haven't felt like that in 10 years until this year. And then, when Max Johnson came on, I was a little bit nervous what that was going to look like. had a great showing first game, and I'm like, okay, our offense is still just as powerful. I mean, this is awesome. And then implosion. I mean, I'm not. I can't say anything different than that. It's just implosion, where it's just like, okay, well, what happened to the offense that we've been seeing all year? And I think I talked about conspiracy theory after Alabama, where I'm like, this is conspiracy theory esque, but it seems like Jimbo just like stepped back in. But something has got to be figured out at the offensive line. Hopefully they did some of that this bye week, but
Yeah.
good lord.
I had to go back and find this tweet from Carter Carls, who works for the A&M 24/7 site. So I think either it was this past off season, and I was talking about pressure rates, and the past 2 years, like in 2021 and 2022, uh, A&M's offensive line allowed a pressure rate in the 40s, like 44, 45% both years. Which if you look at just Power Five schools, it was the worst in the country. Uh, like the only teams that were worst overall were like uh, South Alabama and like the service academies because they never throw the football and like
Yeah.
every pass play is like gets pressured. Um, so I'm like, man, 45, and this is awful. Like, just get it to respectable. Get it into the 30s. Like, just an average pressure rate allowed would be fine. Against Tennessee, it was 64%. Max Johnson has a guy in his face 2 out of every 3 dropbacks. Like it's unacceptable. I mean,
Yeah,
there's no way
absolutely.
like no other team is doing this poorly at protecting its quarterback. It's awful.
Yeah, and that's maybe I shouldn't be this transparent on the podcast. I don't know. I mean, it's
Do
a
it.
podcast, but my outlook is Jimbo. You have one last chance, and that's that you better hire a good offensive line coach this offseason. Otherwise, you next year's likely to be your last year. I don't think that we fire Jimbo at the end of this year. I don't think we rehire a new coach. Um, at least I still stand by Jimbo for that long. We've kind of talked about that. I don't know if it was on the podcast or not, but I just with Connor's junior year, and Evan and Noah's junior year and that kind of thing. I wouldn't want a whole new install with a whole new offense and all that. I I would rather give them one more shot and then figure something out. Um, but we've replaced everybody else, and we've replaced offensive line, but Adazio just doesn't seem to be doing it. I don't know. I mean, why I hesitated to say that in the beginning is because you just never know how much of that's on the coach and how much of that's on the players,
Yeah.
and so um, I don't know. It something's got to be fixed there, and
Yeah.
part of that's recruiting. Like Jimbo talks a big game about how we've got to win the battle up front, and that's the most important thing in the SEC, and we can really recruit on the defensive line, or at least we used to could. I mean, I don't know. We'll see how that goes in the future, but to this, the last 10 years we've been recruiting good on the defensive line. A lot of that goes to Terry Price though, and what's that going to look like in the future? That's worrisome to me because this guy Jimbo, who talks about how important it is to win the battle up front, doesn't ever recruit solid offensive linemen. I don't feel like I
Well,
don't feel
and
like we have.
we talked about that, I think, in like our very first or maybe our second episode that we ever did.
Mm,
And we're like, hey, like at that point, we were like, hey, something that Jimbo seems to be doing well is, roster management. Um, Now I would say that he's not doing that very well. Like when we
yeah,
have, like, if you go back and look at our recruiting classes, yeah, we signed, probably double digit defensive linemen that would rank in the top 100 nationally of all players.
Mhm.
And I don't. There may be one off, like maybe Cam Dewberry was top 100, but everyone else wasn't. And like there's some good. I think maybe Chase Pasantis was. He's a true freshman,
Mhm.
and like there's some good players in that bunch. But Bryce Foster's another one. Like he was. I think he was definitely top 100. But outside of Kenyon Green, who was a 5-star, you know, player coming out,
Mhm.
uh, they haven't developed anybody else. Like Kenyon came in 5-star, started 3 years, was awesome, went in the first round, and ever since then they've a lot of the successful guys were holdovers from the Sumlin era.
Yeah.
Like Dan Moore and Ryan McCollum and Jared Hawker and Carson Green, and like I don't know if it's talent, if it's experience or maturity. Um, yeah, you'd love to start, 5 seniors on your O line every year, but you know, Georgia doesn't do that. Ohio State doesn't do that. Why do we have to have, 4 seniors and a first round pick to have a competent offensive line?
Yeah. And that's the confusing thing to me, and that's you're talking 2020 when we had seniors and on the offensive line, we were good, but I mean, all of them were 3-star recruits. Yeah, and a lot of that went more into developing those players than anything else, and those that coach isn't here anymore. That offensive line
Yeah,
coach is not here anymore. We let him go somewhere else, and so I feel like some of this Jimbo era stuff is Jimbo started with a pretty salty staff, and we'll lose a good one by one and replace them with an okay one.
yeah.
And I think we're seeing that last year and this year.
And when you look at these guys, like Jimbo himself and Petrino and Adazio, uh, like like mainly those three guys, really like everyone else kind of too.
Mhm.
Um, this would have been an all-star coaching staff 10 years ago. You know,
Oh,
when
sure.
when those when those three guys I just named were all head coaches, Jimbo won a championship, a decade ago. Like if you told me then, hey, one day you're gonna have, you know, like Jimbo's the head coach at A&M, wouldn't have believed that. Oh, and his OC is Bobby Petrino, freaking wizard from Arkansas that we could
Yeah.
never beat. And then, this badass O line coach that coached O line for Urban Meyer at Florida, and was the head coach at Boston College. He's going to be your O line coach. Like, oh my God, we're going to score a crap ton of points. We're going to score on everybody. And
Right.
that's I'm just not. I don't think any of us are knowledgeable enough to know, you know, the the different scheme and like what they're being taught and things like that. But from a very high level, it just seems like offense has passed those guys by.
Mhm.
And like, maybe like with a guy like Connor at quarterback, you know, he can probably make any offense look acceptable. He's a pretty special player, and we
Yeah.
have some very special receivers. But when it comes down to it, when push comes to shove, and we can't execute. Well, we can't execute because whatever we're trying to teach our athletes, they're not comprehending it. So I don't know if we blame them or if we blame the instructor, who obviously is struggling to get his message across.
Yeah. I mean, if you're the coach, you're in charge of making sure that they execute. And quite frankly, if we're blaming it simply on execution, then you're rejecting your own responsibility.
I'm actually
You
getting
know,
more pissed off the more
as
we
we go
talk.
through this.
Like hearing you say that, I'm like, if like go back to like 2019,
Uh-huh.
We played Alabama at home. Jimbo's second year, still trying to remake the roster, and Bama's got 4 first round picks at receiver and a first round quarterback, and pretty much all the offensive line went in the first round. And like we kept them at bay for like a little bit, and then they just burned us. Like I can't be upset about that. Like we don't have guys that can run with like nothing we can do about it. You know,
Right.
we executed just fine. It's just, hey, that team has a higher caliber of player than we do, and that's no longer the case. We have as much talent as anybody else, and you know, we're not losing games because they have better players or they're faster or they're stronger. It's just, it's just it's incompetence and just not knowing what to do on offense. And it is lack of execution, but that's not on the players. It's on, like you said, he's
Yeah.
failing his own philosophy there.
It is because I mean, if you're saying, well, we had a good plan, but we didn't execute, so we coached good, they didn't play good. And that's what I mean. Those are synonyms for those words, right? Like we had a good game plan, but we didn't execute. We coached great, players didn't play good. That's I'm not a big. I'm not too terribly keen on that myself, and so I am harping on this team a lot. So let me bring it back and just say, there's just a lot of things that at this level, at this where we are talent wise, where we are with our team, and where we should be with our coaching staff, we shouldn't be in this position. We should have won the last two games. We shouldn't have lost to Miami. We shouldn't have dropped that, and we shouldn't be sitting here staring down the barrel of 7-5. I think Mississippi State is a very winnable game. Abilene Christian's a pretty winnable game. I think we can win those games. And let's talk at this week's game. South Carolina, they're not pushovers. Look at what they did against Georgia. They fought. They played well against Georgia. This isn't just a pushover game. And, I hope that we made some adjustments in the bye week. But I think what's most aggravating for me, because you brought up 2011 whenever we blew those halftime leads. We've done that twice in the past two games. And
Yep.
and what you see, it to me doesn't look like our players weren't
I
executing.
feel like they were beating Miami at halftime too.
We were, I believe. No, I think Miami.
Did they go
been
up there
so
at
long.
the end?
I think they went up right as we went into half.
Okay.
But Miami. I mean, Miami. The first 10 minutes of the game, I think we scored 3 times. Like it was like boom, boom, boom. Like it looked like we were just going to absolutely decimate them, and we didn't. But I haven't seen lack of execution as much as I've seen lack of adjustments. And then I see these other the teams that we're playing against make great adjustments at halftime. I think we're executing the plan. We're just not planning the way we ought to. And that's where I'm hard on the coaching staff right now. And I mean, if you're the boss, if you own a company, right? If your employees do something wrong or mess something up, I mean, ultimately it's your responsibility, it's your fault. Even if it wasn't you directly that did it, it's still your fault. Same sense, if you're the coach and your players aren't executing, whose fault is that? It's yours. It's not theirs. And I would at least go give Jimbo the benefit of the doubt to say, like, he doesn't come across that he blames his players and not himself.
Yeah.
But to me, some of that is rejecting responsibility and giving it coach speak, but Jimbo's getting to the end of his rope. Aggies have loved Jimbo. I mean, he felt right. He fit perfect with our culture and everything whenever he came in. I mean, it just everything was perfect. And I feel like the last 2 years he's kind of abused that. And I think we're we're starting to say, okay, what the heck?
Yeah.
You've got to fix this.
Um. Yeah. And I'm trying to to walk a thin line here because I don't want to come out and say we've got to we've got to fire everybody. Like
Oh, me too. Me too.
I'm trying to not delve into that because you know there's there's 5 games left, and like I always say, these players, they absolutely like they absolutely deserve our support, and that's the best part of being a fan is being able to support these players that play for your school.
Mhm.
On the other hand, when you know try to look at the big picture, and you know I think I think we are staring at a 7-5, uh, from unless Mississippi State just becomes a totally different team in the next few weeks. I feel like that's pretty winnable.
Mhm.
Um, Obviously, Abilene Christian and this weekend against South Carolina,
Yeah.
um, I feel pretty good about winning those games. Spencer Rattler scares you a bit, and they have a stud receiver who is questionable for our game, so he may not play. But they don't block very well. We should be able to harass Rattler quite a bit.
Mhm.
But once again, in every game going forward, except for ACU, uh, no idea what to expect from the offense. And uh, the defense played its butt off the last 2 games, and it didn't matter. I think those 2 teams are better than Mississippi State and South Carolina. And also, I don't want to write off Ole Miss and LSU as just losses, but it's really hard not to right now. And I think, uh, and I've got no insider info into what's going on behind the scenes, or
Right.
any talks like that. We have nothing on that. But um, I don't know what 7-5 would do. To be quite honest, I don't know you know if that's concrete, if that makes it concrete in one direction or the other, whether to keep Jimbo or to move on. Um, 6-6, I think might might be the end of it if that were to happen.
I
Eight,
agree. We'd have to lose this weekend though.
yeah, I think yeah. So it feels like every time we get on here for the past 3 weeks, we're like, this game will define the season, and
Yeah, yeah.
we've been right every time.
Well, I just mean like this game will determine whether we're 6-6 or 7-5.
Yeah,
Is my thought. I mean, I think we can win. We could win out. I mean, we have the talent to, and that's what's aggravating. Is like we have the talent to. Why isn't it happening now? To some degree, you know, if you, I don't know. I have to remind myself this sometimes. And for those listening, I'm speaking more to you because, um, I have to try to remind myself of where I was and when. Um, Thankfully, I have a podcast I could go back and listen to. But if you're my honest prediction at the beginning of the year was 9-3, and I kind of I thought that we might beat Bama this year, and that Tennessee would be Tennessee, and then maybe LSU would be the 2 games that we drop within the SEC. And then I've thought all along that we were going to lose to Miami this year. Um, that was kind of like I think it was Miami, or maybe I said Ole Miss. Miami and Tennessee were the 2 that I really thought we're going to lose those 2 games, and then we're going to lose one more. Um, so if we win out, which is doable, we have the talent to do it. Um, you look over the last 2 weeks, we could have won both of those games. We could have beat Miami. I mean, none of those games were games that I mean, they're ones that we really beat ourselves, I feel like. And if we did do some adjustments during this bye week, maybe got some more guys healthy, and we come out strong this week, we might could, they remember November, as Jimbo says. Maybe we can finally be ranked. And, that remains to be seen.
yeah,
It is hard to not look at the remainder of the season and say we're going to go 7-5. That's my prediction looking at it right now. But then again, I stop and think, okay, well, I think we can. I mean, look at Ole Miss and LSU's offensive line. We can really give them some trouble, and so I think they're games that matchup wise we might be able to battle them pretty well, but we got to figure out how to score. But the
Yeah.
good thing about Ole Miss and LSU is they don't have a defense. At least
Yeah.
Bama and Tennessee both had defenses. They might not have been great defenses, but they weren't bad. They were good defenses. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so, Ole Miss and LSU pretty bad defensively.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt. And like you've got to think, even with as stubborn as Jimbo is, like with after what we saw in those last two games and having 2 weeks to, prepare and practice and, make an adjustment if he chose to do so. Maybe he just finally said, hey, enough's enough. What we've been doing isn't working. We're going to try something else.
Mm-hmm.
Then, if that is the case, we're going to find out on Saturday. If it's not the case, we're also going to find that out on Saturday
Yeah.
because that's kind of like they may change, like tweak a thing here or there, but at this point, I just unfortunately I just feel like Jimbo is who he is. He's going to coach the way he coaches, and we've already seen this show. And um, and not to say that I'll say right now I expect us to win on Saturday. I 100% do. Um, but if we don't, we're gonna have a pre-show, a long pre-show meeting next week to decide what the heck we're gonna talk about when we get on here.
Might not even
Because
do one. I mean,
yeah,
nobody's gonna listen anyhow at that point.
yeah,
But that's kind of. I mean, I think we win this weekend. I think we have the talent that we can win out. I'm also beginning to think that maybe Jimbo is better suited in a conference that you don't play juggernauts every single week. And that, we could play up to them. If you watch how we play Bama, we can play up to them sometimes. But that's another reason why I think Jimbo, it might be good to keep him around is because uh, next year hopefully won't be as hard of a schedule. I don't know who all is our opponents next year, but we don't have Bama and we don't have Georgia,
yeah.
and I don't
And
think
the
we have
three
Tennessee.
and three of the tougher teams, Texas, LSU, Notre Dame, are all played at Kyle Field, which is a positive.
Yeah,
Um, but
because we haven't figured out away games for some reason.
no, absolutely not. Um, so yeah, that's apologies for not recording last week. Sorry to uh, keep you guys hanging, but um, yeah, that's where we're at today on October 26th in the year 2023 with this program. So um, hate to be
Yeah, this is a very downer of an episode, I'll
I know
say.
we're sounding super negative. I feel like we're just being we're still just being ourselves, like we didn't come on here and like, hey, let's trash the program, like
Right.
we're speaking freely here.
Yeah, let me say a couple good things before we sign off. I'm not going to end on that note, because I think we have very talented players. I think we have players that care about this program, believe in Jimbo. We've got seniors that came back, with Damani and Ananias, and they still have a lot to play for, and there's still a lot for this team to play for. And what I will say to Jimbo's credit is he has a way of getting teams to continue to battle it out and continue to play even whenever the the season seems to go off the rails. I don't feel like Sumlin did a very good job at that. I felt like whenever it would go off the rails, it just was like it went off the rails and
Yeah,
and it was unmitigated. I think Jimbo does a really good job of saying like, "Hey, let's reel it back in, let's focus." The season's not over yet. We could still go 9-3, and that's a decent season. You know what I mean? Um, and so I think, I mean, to Jimbo's credit, he's good at doing that. And you brought up earlier like how what the pedigree of these coaches that we have on the staff are. Um, you know, maybe they could figure it out this 2 weeks. And that's what you were just saying. Of we'll figure that out. On Saturday, how are they going to come out? How are they going to look? And I think I still have optimism in the program. I'm still not a believer that we should fire Jimbo. There's some people that have given up completely and think that we need to fire Jimbo. I'm right now kind of more so saying, okay, I don't think there's anybody out there that we're going to replace him with that would just make a night and day difference, because we have a very, very talented roster. And so, I don't think that's worth giving up on that roster, because I think you lose guys if you hire a new coach. And so I don't think it's worth getting rid of that roster. Now, I might have a different tune if we end up going 6-6 or 7-5, and then all of a sudden some of our really good players transfer all of a sudden. Um, but I'm also understand not one that thinks that all of our good players are going to transfer because we lost 3 games. That just
Yeah.
that's it doesn't work that way. Sure, you have some guys transfer every year, but that's not how it works.
Yeah.
So
I'll give a positive note. Although I don't know the status of of Cooper or Nolan. But this defense has been lights out since Miami.
oh yeah,
I would expect, they had back to back games with 15 tackles for loss and 7 sacks. They could do that again this weekend, because I don't think the Gamecocks block very well. Uh, Even if Nolan can't go, we have a plethora of great defensive tackles and defensive linemen who should be, in Spencer Rattler's grill pretty much all day.
hmm
If Xavier Leggett does not play, their stud receiver, then I really really like us to shut their offense down.
sure,
Um, so we'll see, and we'll see what we do on offense if they can. I do think Tennessee's defense is pretty good. Obviously, Bama's defense is very good. I don't really know what South Carolina has on that side of the ball. If they can get some kind of run game going and take some of the pressure off Max, it would go a long way. But yeah, it's there's it's not like we went from being, oh, this team is awesome, to, oh, they're the worst team in the country. Like, it's still a very uh, capable team in several aspects, and
sure.
we'll see what adjustments they made.
Yeah, we've been very critical this episode, and I think probably a little bit more so um, than what is warranted. I think it just kind of we're following the rabbit trail of the conversation. But I think I'm still an Aggie, still going to the game on Saturday, still you know excited for what the rest of this year will bring. So I haven't given up on this team. I haven't given up on this coaching staff either. I just uh, admittedly critical. I mean, when you have this level of talent, you're held to a higher standard, and we've got to hold to that standard, and I don't feel like we've done that yet, and so that's kind of why that came out. But still supportive of this team, these players. I'll always be supportive of the players, because no matter what, they want it more than me and you do,
Yeah,
and so always be supportive of that, not putting them down by saying this. But I am saying, okay, hey, if we're going to keep talking about execution, what's the common denominator there? And we need to remember that. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, Will, any final comments?
No, I don't think so. Uh, it kind of sucks that all of our games this year are going to be at 11 a.m. Uh,
Yeah.
but is what it is. Uh, with admittedly, with the Rangers doing well, I have, and us not doing well, have taken a couple steps back from being in in the weeds in the program, in the day to day, especially for in the middle of the season. But like you said, we're Aggies. We love this team. Uh, I'm going to watch them play, as much as I can, and I'm excited to see them again. So we'll be back and break it all down.
I can't wait. Hopefully, we're bringing down a win.
Hope so. Hope so. But hopefully, by the next time we talk, the Rangers have a sizable. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to shut the fuck up. Shut the heck up right now. Hopefully, they have a a good weekend. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next week.